What's going on, everyone? Wherever you're watching from, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to a special recording of FlowFest V4, and we're going to go through all of the challenges today. We understand that FlowFest is a time-based competition, and as our competitors are flying, there's so much going on to properly be able to explain. So I thought I'd take the time to actually sit down with time and spend the next 30 minutes or so with you watching and walking you through every single one of the challenges, and then explaining some of the best practices, some of the things that I've seen. And maybe if you're a flow expert and you're watching this, maybe you have some recommendations yourself on how to do this. So feel free to put some comments as we're going, and let's go ahead and kick this off. So the first challenge that we have is challenge CN0027. So the challenge states Universal Containers is looking for a quick method to deactivate products within their organization. If you've taken a Salesforce exam, every sentence counts. So remember, for this, they're counting on new Winter 23 features that allow them to quickly do that from anywhere in the system without the need of depending on list views. Users requested that they could use a text field to search for a set of products. There's a request, there's a requirement. The goal is that the table of data, hint, to select the active products would show any products that contain the text values entered in that field. To help users select amongst products available to be deactivated, please make sure to select product name, product class, and product code, and that they're easily visible. Make sure users are required to select at least one product. Once you're done, but before submitting, make sure to store the following information on the variables that are included in the flow. Number of products under count selected products, and text input value under text product filter. And a quick note, we will provide you with these. So this was in the package that we provided to competitors. Now, when you're ready to debug, you have to submit the current submission variables and the debug instructions to be able to input the diesel as a text and then select all products. So let's kick this off. And here's CN0027. And I'm going to zoom in as much as I can. And let's kick this off. Let's see, a little bit more zoom wouldn't hurt nobody. There we go. Maybe too much now. All right, so we'll start here with a product filter. So the first screen is that product filter, that requirement that we've had where we were basically stating, all right, we need to be able to have a regular text field that we want to filter by. So effectively, it's a simple text field that we need, and we want to make sure that it's required. Just in good practice, people can't skip by leaving this blank. Otherwise, on our very next step, we want to go ahead and get the products. And most importantly, there are two conditions that we need to consider here. One, it's that the name of the product contains what we want to filter by. But two, the challenge requires that you're deactivating products. So by definition, you want to pull the products that are still currently active. If you don't include this, you may include products that are not active, which you're going to deactivate deactivated products. That wouldn't make a ton of sense. So make sure to include this as well. Often when we're building flows, we forget. We want to make sure that we include all records when we're going through here. And we can automatically store all fields. That's perfectly fine. The next screen is where some of the magic happens. Now we want to include a data table in here. Now that we have our collection of products that we've picked up in the last get element, then now we want to be able to create our data table. But in the description of the challenge, there are a couple of key things that we have to keep in mind. So in the API name, we just put that basic information in. Now, most importantly, your data source is the get products that you have. Now, when it comes to configuring the rows, we want to be able to select multiple records. However, very importantly, we identified that there needs to be a minimum selection of at least one. You don't want folks to be able to pass through without selecting anything. You do want to make sure that you force them to select at least one. So there's a minimum selection that's enforced here. Now, configuring the columns, you want to make sure you add the 3 columns that we have, and then you proceed on to the next one, where we'll go ahead and set the count here right away. So effectively, the count selected is what we want to have because this is a submission variable. So this is specific to the competition. It doesn't add a ton of value in a real life scenario, but just wanted to add that in there. Most importantly, you could loop that and you could just do it within. A lot of folks like to do adding one for every loop. So you do, for example, count selected, and then you would do add, and then just a static one. So then it loops 3 times. It's 1, 2, 3, and you're good. But a lot of people forget that there is an equals count, and that saves you a lot of time when it comes time to doing these things. A lot of times it'll save you having to loop just to get that information. But in this case, we need to loop this. We loop the selected products, and we will go ahead and make the. We will go ahead and create a single record variable, which is going to house the information that we need for every loop, where we're going to at each loop select the product ID. And then once we have that going, we want to make sure that the active checkbox in the product is set to false. Now, something that's new, and anybody watching, feel free to correct me. I think it's winter 23. Before, you had to separate this assignment element and add a second one, where the first one you would set up these items, and the second one you would actually add in the variable, the single record variable that you have here. You would have to have that as a separate assignment where you add that to the collection. So once we have that, let's go ahead and click done, and now we can do all of that in one shot. So in the event of a time-based competition, it would save you a little bit of time. In a real-world scenario, this would be something that's a little bit cleaner. And we can go ahead, once we have all that done, update your products to confirm the deactivation. And then in this case, we submit the challenge. So let's quickly run a debug and see how that looks like in our test scenario. So as our debug comes up, let's go ahead and click run. And here we're going to use the variable, the debug instructions that we've had. So under the debug instructions, you have here where we'll filter the product by, and I'm just going to go into the value of diesel. Now, in our test data set, there are 3 products that contain diesel. The instructions in the debug are to select all products and go ahead and click next. And you are done with this challenge. So we have one challenge out of the way now. Let's go ahead and move to our second challenge, which is CN0028. And the challenge states, Universal Containers is approaching their fiscal year end and have asked their sales reps to follow up on any outstanding opportunities. To ensure a good customer service experience remain their highest priority, we want to exclude any accounts that have open cases. Once you have that list of accounts, get all open opportunities for those accounts. Once you have that information, make sure to submit the values requested below. You want to make sure to submit the count of opportunities with no cases and the count of open cases, and there are no debug instructions. So here, this is a particularly interesting one. So folks could have done this in a variety of different ways, but the way that I found that skips the most steps in a time-based competition and gets exactly what you need done is the following. So the challenge states that we want to make sure that we don't want to have any opportunities for accounts that have open cases. So we start by getting all open cases. So here we have to make sure that the is closed equals false. This is your criteria to get started. A couple of the folks we saw in the competition forgot to add this in, and that was their undoing in this challenge. So you want to make sure that you get all of the records. Why is this important? Because what we need to do is that this challenge depends on Winter 23's in and not in operators, which basically allows us to exclude certain things from any get element or any delete element that we're using. So once we have that, we have all of these cases, we have to loop these cases because what we're looking for is not the case itself, but the account ID of the cases. So what we're going to do is that we're going to start a text collection, a text collection. And we're going to add the account ID, not the case ID, the account ID for each one of these. So a lot of folks went to get cases, then went to get accounts, and then created the collection based on that get accounts. And just it ended up being far too long where you didn't have to necessarily go to that length in order to deliver all of this. So in here, we created our text account collection, and we were just adding in the account IDs for all of the accounts for all of the open cases. Now, once we have that and we loop through all of the open cases, effectively, we have this collection now that we can use to be able to make sure that we only have, that we can exclude, right, the opportunities that we don't want. So then this is where the real magic starts. We want to go ahead and get all of our opportunities and make sure that all of the opportunities that we get, we have the account ID. So we want to get all opportunities where the account ID is not in our text account collection. And that is closed equals false because we want all open opportunities. The real world scenario of this is that we don't want to follow up with folks that have open cases or try to upsell them and maybe potentially upset them and try to sell them something to say, hey, we're having issues with our product here and you're trying to sell us more stuff. So this is how we put that together in this scenario. We want to make sure that we get all records. And once again, once you have that information, we want to make sure that we assign the count checks. In this case, we want to make sure that the count of open cases equals the count of your first get, and then the count of open opportunities with no cases equals count from the get opportunities. Again, a couple of the folks would want to just go ahead and do the add one here, but you can see that in this particular case, if I did the count cases and add one here, I accomplished the same thing and I don't need this. But if I wanted to get the count of opportunities, some folks might have looped this collection and ran an entire loop just to add one, and one by one add it, where instead of having to do that, we just did a simple equals count and we got what we needed. This is the challenge that folks struggled with the most between the three challenges that were the qualifier challenges, at least from what we saw on our data after the competition, and we had some time to carefully look at how the submissions played out. Moving on to the third challenge. This one was a Fix My Flow, and this one was a very simple one, but a clever one. We enjoyed ourselves, and we wanted to put it together. So Fix My Flow, for those who don't know, is where we actually provide a flow to you, and the flow would basically have a problem. So it would be up to you to figure out what the problem is, fix it, and submit it correctly through the debug. So let's get started. So the Salesforce admin at Universal Containers is trying to learn more about flows. In an attempt to better understand the decision elements, the admin has created a simple test case to gather a single account, and if the user running the flow is the account owner, then create a task to show that the record was visited. The admin is confident that the flow was created correctly, but every time that the debug is run within the flow, it follows the default outcome path by mistake. Can you help the admin understand what is being done incorrectly and debug the flow successfully by having it follow the yes path? Now, the challenge here, and it is already solved in this particular case, the challenge here, here we go. So here we have something that seems very simple. There is a get account, and the get account, we just get any first account, and we check, right, if the person that's executing the flow owns the account. So what this looks like here, how we had it at first, is this. So competitors got prompted to this, which on the surface seems very innocent and seems actually correct. If the account owner of the owner ID of the account that you got is equal to the user ID of the person running this flow, then follow the yes path and the yes outcome. Assign your values and create your task. This is here for us mostly as a distractor. This plays zero role into where the challenge lies. Now, if we debug, I'm going to go ahead and save this as is. And I'm going to debug as is so you guys can see where the problem lies. So again, look at it from this perspective. We're the outcome of yes is if the owner ID of the account equals the user ID that is running the automation. So let's go ahead and run the debug and let's take a look. So in running the debug, we're going to go ahead and get the account. We successfully found our records, so that's looking good. But you can see here that this followed the no path. So let's go ahead and take a look at the decision element. And if you look at it closely, we look at this and we say, hey, get account owner ID. This seems the same, but as I don't know if it's a bug or a quirk of how Salesforce works, but the user ID variable follows the 15 character in Salesforce, whereas the owner ID, when you run a get record, returns the 18 character. So in order to fix this, all you need to do is to be able to add in the correct 18 character value here. For those of you that have worked on this, this is a case safe ID. So we had created a formula. Whoops. Did I close? I closed it. All right, well, let's take this back. Let's go back to flows and let's reopen this. This is 29. Here we go. So we're back to it. So we had created this user ID where all it uses is a case safe ID for the user ID. This function here will return the 18 character for any ID that you have. So all you needed was to basically create this formula and be able to come here and replace that with this new formula. And if you save and we debug, now we see that the outcome goes correctly. We'll take a look at the decision to own it just to make sure, and we can confirm, here we are, that everything looks as it should. So once again, we're looking pretty decent here. And now we have 18 characters to 18 characters, and now our yes path works. Final challenge, and this was the head-to-head challenge and the most complex one. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, here is challenge pack 30, or challenge number 30 from our FlowFest challenge pack. So this is a bit of a long one. So here we were testing everything. We threw the whole kitchen sink at our competitors in trying to really see how they could do this in a stressful, time-sensitive environment in order to deliver all of this. In most of these cases, this would not be the situation. However, we are in a time-based competition. This is what esports is all about, and we want to make sure that we have something exciting for y'all to see. So the leadership at Universal Containers is asked to provide a weekly recap screen flow that details out overall stats about current opportunities that could be used on the home page. This information will include the following: total number of opportunities, how many open opportunities, how many closed-won opportunities, the deal size for closed-won opportunities, the average deal size, and the total count of all opportunities whose amount is greater than the average amount of closed-won opportunities. Then you need to do two data tables, with the first one giving you the top 5 opportunities of all time, open or closed, based on opportunity amount. Then basically it gives you a couple of tables that you need and how it should be sorted, and equally for the top 5 accounts, and sorted based on highest annual revenue. And we put in a couple of types. So, and then here we put that these accounts should have no open opportunities, kind of saying basically, hey, what are the highest revenue accounts that we have in our database that we don't have an open opportunity? And here are the ones that we really should be working at getting our foot in the door with them. So this is how we were kind of strategizing this. Now, let's take a look at the challenge. So in this one, we go ahead and we start by getting the opportunities first. So as soon as we get our opportunities, we get all of our opportunities in the entire system. Now, a couple of folks were getting multiple had multiple elements for get records to get opportunities under different criteria. So we can get all opportunities, get the open opportunities. It's not generally a best practice to do that, especially since we have Salesforce has released the filter element, and we use that. There's also the sort element that's going to play a big role, because we saw that several folks were trying to get your top 5 by doing fake loops, which is effectively using a decision element. And once you hit the number 5 on accounts variable, you exit the loop that way. So there's different ways, but sort is a function that's available to you. We'll show that to you guys so you guys can take a look. But as soon as we get the opportunity, we assign the total count. It's crucial that you assign the total count right away, in particular because we're going to use this get opportunities collection in a sort, and I'll explain the considerations of that later. But because we're using a sort at some point in time here, it's crucial that you get this total count early on. We then filter our open opportunities, and essentially running this filter that just says, hey, out of the original get opportunities, give me the ones that is closed equals false. Important to note, in a filter collection, when you run a filter, the original collection remains untouched. And it creates a new collection under the settings that you have. So you still have the original, and you have the new one now at your disposal to play with. So effectively what we did is that we looped the open ops to be able to build the collection of accounts that have open opportunities. This is going to be relevant further on when we get our accounts with no open opportunities. That's for that final data table that we're working with. Then we filter the 1 opportunities, and we loop that again, because at this time we need the average deal size for those opportunities. So what we need to do is that we need to sum the amount of all of these together. And unless you're using an unofficial SF component to try to save yourself from looping that with the calculate, there's a calculation Apex action that you can use to calculate without the need of a loop. Now, without using that, you need to have a loop to be able to run your sum. So here we have a variable, sum of 1, and then we just keep adding the amounts together. From 0, we keep adding that up. So that way, afterwards, we can take the 1 count, and we could divide that later. So you could technically have the this, if you're asking, instead of doing this, you could have just kept this in here and just do add 1. You could technically have done that. I will grant you that one. But I was also trying to see how fast I could do it, and I didn't think of that. So you could technically save an element and go a little bit faster. Then once you have that, you need to create a formula to be able to calculate the average. So the average would be the sum of everything that you've won, right, after the loop is done, and you want to divide it by the count of 1 ops. So here, you're going to add that in later. That's going to come in handy on the screen flow when you're adding that to the screen, but you're going to need also to be able to filter out the opportunities, all time, open or closed, that are above the average amount of opportunities. So here we go. And we want to make sure that, again, we're using the standard one, the very first get collection. And now we just want the ones that have an amount that are greater than the average one opportunity. So then finally, we jump into a collection sort. Now, this is where things get very important. And I made this mistake when I was running it the first time. And I know several competitors made this mistake as well. So the collection sort is interesting because not only are you allowed to resort your collection, the records within your collection based on whatever you need, is the amount, which is amount descending. You could technically do this already on your get record. So the sort can be helpful in a couple situations where you need to sort multiple times across multiple things for different reasons. So, that way, if however you sorted on your get record at first, if you need to change that around for whatever reason, you can do so. But technically, this functionality is there. So if you only need to sort it once, this may be irrelevant. However, the collection sort element also allows you to set the maximum number of elements. So this is how we get to that top 5 that the challenge requests. But most importantly, and the mistake that I made that I've seen a couple of folks make as well, if you try to say, oh, well, I'm going to run this right here at the top. I mean, if I already got my get opportunities right here, why wait all the way to the end to run that? Because remember how I said that on your filter elements, what the outputs are the original collection, you still get to keep your original collection of your get opportunities. And then you have a new collection, which is the filter that you just ran. So you'll effectively leave this element with 2 collections. Well, in the case of the sort, it's actually the opposite. You permanently modified the original collection. So by the time that we pass this element, the get opportunities collection from that get records will only have 5 records. So if you try to calculate your averages, if you try to run your filters after this point, it's only going to filter off those 5 records because you threw everything else out of your collection. So it's very important that you're aware of that, and that can cause some problems. So once we're here, we assign all of our counts. And then basically all of our counts from our original filters, we assign these remaining counts. And then also our average one op, we just take it from the formula. This one, I don't think if it was terribly relevant, but I did it anyways. This could probably be eliminated, but I'll show you why that was relevant. And then finally, we go for our get accounts. And this get accounts, we get all of our open accounts. And even here, we put a little bit of a trick. So here we did descending annual revenue. Now, we did also the ID of the account where it's not in that collection that we've built all the way up at the beginning, saying, hey, give me only the accounts that don't have a open opportunity right now. However, we put in 2 different types, which means that by the time you put this type and this ID, you have to do condition logic. And that was another potential trick for folks to get tripped up on. We really wanted to see how many folks would catch this in a time-based setting. So because it has to be either one of these and this, it's 1 or 2 and 3. So once you have all of that, we use the collection sort to filter out our top 5. Again, there are more lengthy ways of doing this. You could technically loop the accounts and put a decision element that counts up to 5. And then when you get to 5, it excludes, but you have to do a loop. You have to do a decision element. You have to do an assignment element. And then you have to kind of break that, connect that element to the outside. You just did a filter element here. You got what you needed. And then most importantly, you come to your home screen where you will have a display text to show all of your numbers. Again, that's where the average one ops, you could have replaced this maybe with just a formula of average one ops. So this particular one, I can't seem to think that it was terribly necessary, but you could get away with it. And then you have your top 5 opportunities here, and you have your top 5 accounts.
A data table does not have the capability to sort for you. Maybe that'll be a future feature that Salesforce releases, but right now you have to give it already sorted into the data table. So that's where the collection source starts to become a more valuable element since winter 23, because before there wasn't that many use cases, but now clearly there are. So just something to be aware of, that it's something that the collection sort for right now is a little bit more valuable until data tables have the ability to sort themselves. So just something to keep in mind. Once we have all of that together, we have all of our challenges completed. We will run our debug for one final time, and we can go ahead and get all of our information. So we get all of our information here. We have the 150 opportunities, the 34 one ops, all this information, everything is here for you to see, and we are good to go. This was a really interesting competition to put together. These are all the challenges that we have for you today. Hopefully you have a chance to watch these, enjoy these. Make sure to put some comments if you have any thoughts. And congratulations once again to Simon or Simone. I still don't know how to pronounce your name. And hopefully this helps you guys get better and more proficient at flows, and maybe even feeling confident to sign up next time for our FlowFest competition coming in June. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at the next one.